everybody, I'm Tabitha, and today we're talking about the Shield challenges. So in 2020, I decided to do this new challenge thing where I was going to take on 4 Shield challenges every month and add them to my TBRs for the month. So if you watch this channel, you already know what those 4 shields are, but basically they are the oldest book on my TBR, the highest rated and lowest rated books on my TBR, and then a book that's recommended to me based on a recent 5-star read. So today, now that 2020 is kind of starting to wrap up and it's scary to think that it's actually almost over, I needed to sort of think about why I did this in the first place, whether or not these have achieved the goals I wanted, and if I want to keep them going in 2021. So today, that is exactly what we're going to talk about. Stick around all the way to the end because there is going to be something I need your input on, and I'm going to talk about whether or not I recommend any of these Shield challenges to any of you as a reading challenge for 2021. So first, let me try to explain where the idea for these shields originally came from, because that'll help me assess whether or not I kind of made the goal I was looking for. So really the shields came from, I noticed I was going to the library with my incredibly long TBR. Maybe I should start there. My TBR is realistically right now like 350 books long. Before this year started, I want to say I was looking at a TBR that was almost 500. It's crazy. So I find myself going to the library, and you can imagine a lot of those books are available. So how did I pick? Well, I would like to choose some of the oldest, right? They've been there a long time. I'd like to get them off of there. Or, man, I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I knew like which book was the highest rated? Or maybe I want to go for like a salty one, right? Like which book's the lowest rated? Or the recommendations are crazy. I am, and my husband could attest to this, my friends can attest to this, I am constantly being handed books, stacks of them, actual books. People are just constantly giving me books and going, here, you need to read this. But with a TBR that's already 500 books long, it's really hard to make those a priority. So for the Shield challenges, the whole idea behind them was to get some of those things off there that maybe I forgot I added, to get some indies off of there that maybe got buried under everything else because they can be harder to find, and to start getting some of those books that I was handed, some of those recommendations that I was handed, actually read. So that was the idea behind the Shield challenges. So now that you understand the basic idea behind what I wanted to do with this Shield challenge, the point of this video was to give me a chance to actually look back at the books I read because of that Shield and see if they did what I wanted them to do. Did I meet some of those goals? So I want to start with the Shield for the oldest books on my TBR. I took a look at the 11 of them that I'd read this year that earned that Shield for oldest, and I looked at how many stars I gave each of them when I rated them, and I put them on a graph, so it looks like this. When I look at that graph, the statistician in me immediately goes, whoa, look at that gorgeous bell curve, right? The highest part of that is at that 3-star, and then it tapers down as you get further away from 3s. What does that tell me? That tells me that taking the books that are really old, that have been in my TBR a long time, gets me a rather normal reading experience, right? So most of the books are kind of niche, but typical 3 stars, very few 5, very few 1. They just kind of even themselves out. So really it just means even if I read the old ones, I get the same normal experience. So as I was pulling these titles that I read, because they were the oldest books on my TBR, I was kind of looking at them, and honestly, I remembered adding 5 of the 11 to my TBR. Like when they came up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember adding that. I'm so excited to read it. 5 of them, that's great. Until you realize that that means 6 of them, I don't remember adding. I don't know why I added it. I didn't remember adding it. When it popped up, I was like, what book is this? Why did I add that? So this is kind of why I started that Shield, was to pull those ones out that I sort of forgot about. But that also meant that more than half of the time, I wasn't getting that cool, excited, oh my gosh, I'm finally going to read this feeling, which is kind of a bummer. It is also worth noting that when I pulled the titles to look, 2 of the 11 were independently published. Remember I said one of my goals with these Shields was to pull out some of those indie books that I had added, and maybe they get lost in the shuffle because they're not as easy to find. Only 2 of these were indie published, and that's it. The good news is it meant that I was likely able to find the other 9 at the library, right? So they're easy for me to find, and it was no big deal, which probably means it was free for me, and that's cool as far as spending money for the challenge, but it also meant I wasn't bumping any of the indies up the list, and that's just unfortunate. In fact, when I dug in a little more as far as where I got these ones, 3 of the 11 I had to purchase outright. 6 of them I was able to borrow from the library, and then 2 of them I randomly already owned before the challenge ever started and just finally got to pull off my shelf and read it. So what does all that mean? It means this felt like my favorite idea going into 2020. This was the shield I was the most excited about, that I thought was going to feel awesome. And honestly, at some point, this one started to feel like a chore. Oldest on my TBR is fun. Sometimes. But when you're forcing yourself to do it every month, and about half of them you don't even remember adding, it loses some of that fun. I guess it means that I like the idea of reading the oldest thing on my TBR in moderation. Next up was a shield for the books on my TBR that had the highest average reader rating. So if you've watched this channel before, you already know that basically it means every month I went to Goodreads and I sorted by average rating and sorted high and low, and I promised myself I was going to read the highest, the one that popped up on the top. So let's look at the graph again of star ratings and how that worked, and it looked like this. And whoa, I mean, look at that. Clearly, if you are looking for a book you're going to love, sorting your TBR by average reader rating and picking the highest one works. This completely skewed my data towards, you can see, 4 or 5 star. I mean, they were just high rated books. This worked. So I don't know if it's because I'm adding things that I already liked or because the Goodreads sorting, the Goodreads rating system is working for me, but wow, that really worked out. Further analysis told me that all 11 of these titles, are you ready? All 11, 100% of these were independently published books. I love that. I love it. I love that this is exactly what I wanted out of the challenge. I was able to scoot them up. In fact, 5 of the 11 were books that were on my review request list, but they were further off than I promised further off. So by them earning the shield, I was able to bring them up higher in the rotation, get them reviewed sooner without costing anybody else their spot, which is really, really cool. It also means 6 of them were given to me or I purchased myself from other independent authors, but I didn't even have them promised. It was just, I was hoping to someday get to them. This gave them a someday, and that is just amazing. I love that. Love it completely. I will say, as far as where I got them from, I had to purchase 2 of these once outright. So it's 2 titles I had to pay for after they earned the shield. 5 of them had been sent to me by the author, either because they wanted a review or, you know, whatever, or maybe a publisher. 4 of them, I already owned them before it came up. So I'd probably purchase them to support the author or with an intention of reading them. And I'm glad that I finally got to them. Yeah. So what does all that mean? It means that this one, the highest rated book on my TBR, brought me so much joy. I adored reading these books. Looking back through this list of 11 was like just a fun walkthrough of everything that made me happy this year. There were some great, great books there. These are the books that I keep shoving at people. They're the books that I keep screaming about. They're the books I keep tweeting about. These 11. So I wouldn't have found them this fast if it wasn't for this challenge. So that's awesome. So this shield, I highly, highly recommend this. If you have a channel or you're a big reader, I highly recommend you sort that by average rating and choose those highest ones. It's a true joy to do that. Next up was that shield for the opposite side of that. So that is the lowest average rated book on my TBR. So again, if you watch this channel, you probably already know I went to Goodreads, sorted by average rating, but flip that low to high. I mean, what was my point of this one? People keep asking me that, right? My point was to find that diamond in the rough, the book that everybody picks on but I love, like Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. But I think I also kind of thought some of them might be interesting to see why they're rated so low, to see if I could figure it out. I saw it almost as like a challenge. So let's see how that worked. I had to take a look at, this time there's only 10 that I'd read so far. I'm still working on the one for November. So the 10 that I've read so far, for star rating, broke down like this. Okay, so this is interesting. I mean, it makes sense, right? It makes sense that I was reading lower average books, so you notice there's absolutely no 5-star. But I thought it was interesting that there was still a lot of 3-star. I also thought it was really cool that you can even see some 4 stars pop up on there. So there were some good books in this crop, which I thought was really cool. But, you know, look at that. Over half of these had 1 and 2 star, which were problematic, and that's never fun. I will say 4 of these 10 books were independently published, so that's really cool. 1 of them was a review request that I got to move up. 5 of them I had to purchase outright because I didn't have any other way to get them. 2 of them I borrowed from the library, and 2 of them I actually already owned, and they were on my shelf before they earned the shield. So that means this shield is the one that resulted in the most outright purchases, which is great for the authors, but as a reviewer, as somebody, if you're watching this going, I wonder if that's a shield I want to try, just know that it probably means you're going to spend more on this one. I had to like outright buy more of these books, and that's unfortunate. Definitely hits the wallet a little harder. I mean, half of these I had to go out and purchase, which is a bummer. Another weird note, I only remembered adding like half of these to my TBR in the first place. Remember, that also happened in the oldest books on my TBR. So that happened in that one and in this one. I actually, 3 of these that came up were ones that I'm not even going to talk about why, but like I was dreading reading them. Do you know those books that you have that you almost like just want to ignore? Either because somebody told you, but you're like, no, I feel like that's too much of a chore. Or for just whatever reason, you almost aren't looking forward to that book. Unfortunately, 3 of these were that. So for whatever reason, I'd left them on the TBR out of some crazy sense of obligation, feeling like I had to read them, but I just didn't want to. So that was really kind of unfortunate. So what does all that mean? I probably should have seen this coming, I guess is what that means, but it meant that I was forcing myself to read books that I didn't really want to read. I wasn't looking forward to these. I was hoping to find diamonds in the rough, and I just didn't, I think. That's unfortunate. It just made me feel scummy. I was like forcing myself to admit these books have a low rating, which is a bummer to even say. And then, hey, I agree with this low rating. It was just sad. It was not what I wanted, and it kind of bummed me out. I just don't think I'm salty enough for this one. So that's that. That's what it means for me. It wasn't my favorite. That last shield around here is always recommended based on a recent 5-star read. And of course, you always want to look at how many stars did I give it then, because it was supposed to be like a 5-star. So here's that graph. And my goodness, it turns out those of you who took time to recommend me titles know my reading habits pretty well after all. This is equally as pretty as that highest average graph, and that is really cool. I will say only one of these 11 was independently published, which is a bummer. But to be fair, I kind of expected that. I read a ridiculous number of indie books, and I tell you about a lot of indie books, but not everybody does. And I fully expected you guys to push traditional books on me so that I could then turn around and push indie books on you that would be like the ones you were recommending. I give good indie recs, but I wasn't expecting to get them. So it makes me sad, but I anticipated it. So it's okay that this one was traditional, I think. I will say 5 of these I was able to score at the library for free. 3 of them I already owned, which worked out really well. 1 of them was a review copy that I got to review early, which is really cool. And 2 of them I had to purchase outright after they earned the shield. Interestingly, I also want to look at the breakdown for where those reviews came from. Like what channels you gave me the recommendations from. I said reviews, meant recommendations. 2 of the recommendations came from Goodreads. And they both scored in the low end of that graph, earning the 3-star ratings, which is interesting. Maybe Goodreads isn't the best place to get recs. 6 of them came from social media, 3 Facebook, 2 Twitter, 1 Instagram. All 6 of those scored at the higher end, getting 4 or 5 stars each. So it turns out social media is a great place for me to reach out and get recs, which is really cool. 2 of these came from the bookstore, like in-person, face-to-face recommendations from other readers, and those also did all right. 1 scored 3 and 1 scored 4, so that's really cool. One of this, I'm gonna be honest, one of these was like I cheated and added the sequel because I had just rated the first one 5 stars, so I added the sequel. Whatever, no regrets. It was also 5 stars, so whatever. So what does all this mean? It means this one was fun. It was fun, you guys. Like, to get a chance to take all the recommendations in the books that everyone else loves and is screaming about and actually make time to read them. I mean, that's what reading's all about. That's what having this channel is about, and that was awesome. It was sometimes hard to comb through all those recs that I was getting. I did sometimes feel like I was letting people down when I couldn't pick the one they wanted. Like, sometimes I got, I don't remember how many, but 10, 11, 12, 15, and I was picking one. And so, you know, I almost felt a little guilty, but I had fun, and they were good reads, and it was awesome to actually get to them. So that was really cool. So now that 2020 is almost over, I mean, I have 1 month left of doing these 4 Shield challenges. The question became, what am I going to do for 2021? And what would I recommend some of you do in 2021? So let's see if I can answer that. These were all really good ideas in theory. I liked them. But they also gave me a lot of additional stress. I mean, hello, I was adding 4 more books to my already large TBR every single month. And they kind of made me feel tied to that monthly TBR even more. In other words, I had very little wiggle room for like mood reading, right? So, oldest book on my TBR forced me to really look at my TBR, and it forced me to drop things that I knew were going to come up later that I had no interest in reading, which is good. But it had the least amount of return for me, honestly. I found no real benefit to this one other than it got old books off of my TBR. So I would recommend this for those of you who have really long TBRs like I did, who are trying to figure out how to cut that down a little. This was one way to do it without totally ignoring books. For me, I think I will do the oldest on my TBR like occasionally, but probably not every month. As far as the highest average rater, that one had the biggest return for me. It just brought me the most joy, and I really enjoyed that. That is one I want to keep doing, and I highly recommend all readers do this. I mean, if you have a way to do this, if you have a TBR somewhere like on Goodreads, do this. It would just return some of the coolest reading, and I totally loved it. As for lowest, you already know that one stressed me out the most, I think. I'm just not salty enough. I overanalyzed it. Look, if you want to go for those diamond in the rough ones and have those opinions and be like, this is the reason why this book gets low ratings, here's the reason why you should skip it, go for it. Definitely do it. But I am not going to be doing that one in 2021. It also turned out to be the most expensive of my 4 shields, forcing me to buy more titles outright. So keep that in mind if you want to try this one. The last one is the recommended one. Look, I think it was a lot of fun and it resulted in some great books, but it isn't consistent in terms of like getting the recs and finding the recs. So I'm going to do it again, but probably not every month. So I totally recommend this for others. If you have a channel or if you're a big reader, I would say pick one that sounds like the most like what you're looking for and just go for it. But I wouldn't want to stress out anybody else by suggesting you try 4, maybe. So as for me in 2021, I have a couple of ideas that would kind of let me maximize what I liked about the shields and cut out what I didn't. And I really want your recommendations. So I'm going to tell you about all 4, and then on Twitter and Instagram, there's going to be places you can vote. I really want you to watch this and give me your input. I'd love to know what you think. Choice number 1 is going to be using a wheel. I have a spinning wheel that has 6 sections on it. My idea would be that each month I would put stuff in the sections, things like oldest, highest, mood read, stuff like that, right? And I would just spin it and add one of those to my TBR. Could be fun, would be kind of random. I think that would be cool. Option number 2 is a rotation. So this one would involve like a shield every month, but only one shield and on a rotating system, right? So like January might be oldest, February could be highest. You get the idea. Option number 3 would be that I'm going to add 2 books a month, never 4, but I could go for 2. Basically, I would add the oldest and the highest average rated books to my TBRs every month. Similar to how I did this year, except only 2 shields. You should know that if you vote for this one, I'm leaving myself no room to take your recs. So if you like giving me recommendations, don't vote for this one. Last number 4, this would be like a combo. So the way I envision it working would be like I would add that single title, like number 2, on a rotation, but then I would use the wheel for any additional ones that I got if I finish my TBR early. You should know if you vote for this one, there is no guarantee the wheel will ever show up. So if you like the wheel, you should vote for number 1. But it gives me a chance to get those bonus books in. Could be kind of a lot of fun. I don't know. I just have those thoughts and I don't know what to do. So go vote if you're on my Instagram or my Twitter, or even just drop a comment. Tell me what you think, because, help be part of my choices in 2021. Okay, that is it for me on the Shield Challenge video. Thanks for being here while I broke down what the point was for the Shield Challenges and where I'm hoping to go in 2021. I hope that you go find the things and you actually vote to tell me what you think I should do, because, in January, we got to kick this whole thing off. Drop a comment to let me know you're still here. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye!